Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Let's Play Stonehearth Part 1. As always, my name is eckohour, and I will be the disembodied voice hosting this Let's Play. So many questions. I'll address the obvious elephant in the room first. If any of you have watched some of my videos, you'll notice that it has been quite a while since I last uploaded a video. There is a very, very long but simple explanation for that that I am not exactly prepared to talk about in this video. Suffice it to say, I'm going to talk about it at some point, probably in one of these videos, and I'll make it a post commentary, just so I can talk freely and not have to worry about playing the game and talking at the same time. I'll make it a bit of a montage, so that way if anybody wants to know what's going on in my life, they can watch that video, and if not, if they don't care and they're just here for the games, then you can always skip that video and go to the next one. So I'm going to focus right on the here and now for now, which is this game, Stonehearth. So what is Stonehearth? Stonehearth is a lot of things, but the best way to describe it is a fantasy voxel-based town building simulator. You basically have a group of Hearthlings. You start with a group of Hearthlings, and from there you build a town for them to live in. The town can take any shape that you would want. It bears a lot of similarities to Minecraft, a lot of similarities to Dwarf Fortress, a lot of similarities to SimCity. There's just a whole lot of stuff going on in this game. It is made by a indie developer. Well, I'm not sure if they are considered an indie developer anymore. Originally they were an indie developer, Radiant Entertainment. And they were recently bought out by Riot Games. Now, if any of you are familiar with Riot Games, that is the company responsible for League of Legends. Now, if anybody is a little worried about that, don't worry. This company still exists. They're not, they're not dissolved. It's not like a company like EA where they break up every company that they buy. The structure of Radiant Entertainment is A-OK. They're just owned by Riot Games now, and I think that was for another game that they were working on, a fighting game. So if you're interested in that, you might want to check into some of the news surrounding Radiant Entertainment and Riot Games. But for now, what's important is that this game, Stonehearth, is being made by Radiant Games. The game itself, Stonehearth, is a early access game. It is currently in its alpha. You can see right here at the top of the menu, it's in alpha 17. We're on the dev build, the test version, which means that we're getting access to the latest release in all of its buggy glory. So while we're playing this, we may have plenty of bugs, but it also means that we've got access to the stuff as they release it for the game, which is good. It means we get to try out all the new stuff and get to play all the neat stuff. And if you're looking for how to do that, I might put that in the description on how you get access to that. But this game is available on Steam in early access. It's also available from the developer's website and from the game itself website. So again, it is in early access. So there's going to be plenty of bugs. For whatever reason, there always seem to be people who get upset when they're playing an early access game and they encounter bugs and stuff that breaks the game and all that kind of stuff. And while it can be frustrating, I understand, working on a game for a couple hours and having that progress wiped away by a game-breaking bug. Early access is early access, which means that you're getting access to the game way before it's meant to be played. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. It means you get to play this really fun game that's exciting and everything, but it also means that you have to be aware of the potential issues, that this game is not done yet. Some gaming theorists and developers would say that this game should not even be in your hands right now. But you know, everybody has their own philosophy on how to do games, and I like the early access idea. I like that it can generate interest in the game, and you know what? Radiant Entertainment has been great about taking feedback from their player base and about releasing consistent updates. I would say that they have a new alpha just about every month. I think that does it for the introductory stuff. Excuse me. All right. So, as I mentioned, I want this episode to be a introduction and tutorial episode. So, if you're looking to get into the real, if you're already familiar with the game, or you already have watched a couple people's playthroughs and don't need to know how the game is played, you can always skip this episode, go to the next one. But this one's going to be a little bit slower just because I'm going to be explaining some stuff. Alright, so in the main menu you can either continue. We're not going to do this town here. You can either do that. You can load games, which you have a whole bunch of towns that you could pick from to load your game. And finally, there is new game. We're obviously going to want to do a new game to start a new game. And this system is how they... It's kind of a neat system for how they go about doing the setting up the game. So this is basically the menu for setting up your game going into the new game. So you can pick between two kingdoms right now. I think ultimately there will be 3 or 4. I think there's 3 main ones, but they also intend to... they have a roadmap on their website, developers roadmap, and they have the Ascendancy, Raya's Children, and there's also a Mountain Folk that they haven't yet added to the game, because again, this is still an alpha. The Ascendancy is basically your generic all-around faction. They're good just, you know, in just about any habitat. And so they do well in various biomes. Raya's Children are desert folk, so they're much better at pottery and those various skills, as opposed to the Ascendancy, which is much better at lumber and stonemasonry and that kind of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and pick the Ascendancy, because this is, again, trying to be introductory, so we'll try out the general faction. And here you go, you can select your biome. Right now they have temperate, which is just, it's got mountains, water, plenty of trees, fields, all that kind of stuff. And you also have desert, which is, as the name just is, you know, inclined to make you think, is a desert. It's lots of sand, lots of dirt, not as many trees. You know, this temperate biome would be great for the Ascendancy, the generic guys, and the desert is great for the Raya's Children, but you can play on either one for both factions. We're going to go ahead and go temperate. And finally, you get to pick between peaceful, normal, and hard. So again, this is a fantasy game, and while it is a town building game, it's also got adventure to it. So you can have monsters and various baddies that will spawn to try and attack your Earthlings. Now, if you want to just play in creative mode, if you will, there's peaceful mode, which basically means that the bad guys will not spawn, they won't attack you. You can just spend all your time focusing on actually building the town. It is just truly just I don't want to say generic. It's truly a just pure crystallized town building. You don't have to worry about making soldiers to protect you. You don't have to worry about. I'm not even sure if you have to worry about feeding your villagers, because your villagers can eventually starve to death. I'm not even sure if that's important in sandbox mode. But at the very least, you don't have to worry about bad guys. Normal is the way the game is, you know, generally meant to be played. You'll have bad guys occasionally spawn to attack your village, so you'll definitely need to defend it with some soldiers, and you'll have to worry about feeding your people and all that kind of stuff. And then there's finally hard, which means that there are much more difficult monsters that are thrown at you. We're going to play on normal. We might do, assuming this playthrough goes decently well, we might do another playthrough on with various. We might tinker around with the settings a little bit, but for now, we'll be the Ascendancy in the forest and doing a normal playthrough. So this is the story of a brave band of settlers from the Ascendancy, a prosperous and industrious kingdom. Seeking new lands and adventure, they set off to Darkmoor Forest, a location that is sure to be an inspiring place to start anew. Alright, so now that we've gotten through our game settings, we have our next menu. And this one basically lets you, shows you what your groups of townsfolk are. And it will also let you pick some starting items for your town. So, before we talk about the items over here, we're going to look at the roster here for our town. So each citizen has 3 main statistics. They have mind, they have body, and they have spirit. Mind, generally speaking, determines how well your particular Hearthling does with their profession. So if you have a Hearthling that is a soldier, let's say, mind will determine how well they level up in that job. So the higher their mind, the better they level up in that particular task. It also determines how much experience they get and all that kind of stuff. Body is a little more straightforward. It is basically the health and stamina and speed of your particular Hearthling. So the higher the body stat, the better your health is for that particular person. And finally, spirit weighs into a couple different things. One, there are a couple healing classes in the game. I think spirit determines how well that particular Hearthling does at healing other people. But more generally, spirit determines their courage and willpower. So basically, when baddies come at you, the higher the spirit is, the more likely your particular Hearthling will be to not run away from bad guys. Now, if you have a farmer, let's say you have a farmer, you might not worry about having high body and high spirit. Maybe you want your farmer to run away when bad guys are coming because you want to keep that farmer alive. So you might not worry so much about their body and their spirit. You might be more concerned with their mind. You might want them to have a high mind, or you might want them to have a high body so that they're quick and that they learn how to be a farmer very quickly. The range for these stats are 1 to 6, 1 being the lowest number you can have, 6 being the highest. And you can always re-roll these citizens to try and get a better number, which I'm actually going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and cut here until I have a better assortment of townsfolk. Okay, so I think we've got a pretty good assortment here. We do have a lot of 1s and 2s, unfortunately. This guy's got a pretty low spirit stat. Tayden over here has a pretty low body stat. But all in all, I think we've got a lot of 5s and 6s, which means I've got a lot to work with here. So we're going to go ahead and go with this one. And again, if you want to generate these stats again, you can always re-roll. Alright, so we're going to look over here at our store. So basically, what you can get at your store is you have 150 gold to start with. And whatever you don't spend is what you get to keep going into your game. Now, there occasionally will be merchants and travelers that will visit you that you can buy stuff from and sell stuff to. So sometimes, especially for the more experienced players, it might be better to keep the gold rather than spend it on items. But we're going to go ahead and look at some of these things. So the trapper's knife so basically every game you start with a saw, a carpenter's saw. So basically in every game you get a free saw to basically set one of your townsfolk, one of your hearthlings, to a carpenter. Basically a carpenter can build anything they want to out of wood. So as they level up, they can build various wood recipes, such as workbenches, fences. Basically, if you think Minecraft, try and picture what you can build with wood in that game, and you have a pretty good picture of what the carpenter can do. They can build fences, they can build doors, they can build windows, that kind of stuff. So these 5 right here, the trapper's knife, the farmer's hoe, the wooden sword, the weaver's spindle, and the herbalist's staff, are tools that basically govern what profession people have. So if you have a trapper's knife and you assign it to someone, that person will become a trapper. What is a trapper? Well, a trapper is a person that goes out into the wilderness and sets traps, as the name would imply, for animals. And what you get from that is food. You get meat from the animals, and you also get furs, which is useful for the weaver. We'll get more into that in a second. So it's expensive. You spend all of your money just to get a trapper's knife, but it's pretty useful because it's a reliable source of food, and furs, especially starting out, you can use to sell for a pretty good price to make money and buy other things. Farmer's hoe is, just as the name would imply, useful for a farmer. It's a more balanced and consistent way of making food. The downside with the farmer's hoe as over the trapper's knife is, as far as I've seen, the meat that you get from the trapper doesn't go bad if it's out in the open. I think they turn it into jerky, so it's preserved and everything. It doesn't go bad. Farmer's hoe, when you get stuff like corn and radishes and that kind of carrots, that kind of stuff, and that stuff will eventually rot if it's stored out in the open. So while you get a lot of yield from farming, especially when you have a couple farmers, the food will eventually go bad unless you have a closed storage space for that stuff to go in. The wooden sword is, as you might guess, is what a soldier needs in order to become a soldier. Now you can always make better swords and armor later on, but for starting out you just get a wooden sword and you get a soldier. And you can always build this and this. You can actually build these 4 items here from the carpenter. The carpenter needs to level up a little bit before they can make them, but the carpenter will be able to make this stuff. So wooden sword, useful for soldiers. Weaver's spindle. Basically the weaver can make some decorative items and some clothing sets that both the soldiers and the workers can use. For the workers, the clothing sets make them a little bit more efficient, makes them move quicker, makes them do stuff faster. For the soldiers, it gives them better armor and protection from attackers. Finally, the herbalist staff. Herbalist is one of 2 healing classes in the game. The herbalist is like the passive healer, and then there's the cleric, which is the next level of the herbalist, which is more of an active healer. So the herbalist's job is basically to collect flowers and other herbs from the environment and use that to make healing potions and bandages and all that kind of stuff. And while your people get injured, the herbalist will be able to tend to their wounds over time and heal them. Then finally we have some food that we can pick here. So I think for a beginner, usually you're going to want to pick one of these 4. You're going to want to ignore the trapper's knife and pick either the farmer's hoe, the wooden sword, the weaver's spindle, and the herbalist staff. And I would even go so far as to say that for a beginner, you're going to want to pick the farmer's hoe, the wooden sword, just to get your soldier and a good source of food, and then go ahead and pick up food with the rest of it. That way you have a decent source of food that you don't have to worry about. You have a little bit more time to figure stuff out. We're not going to do that. Even though this is a bit of a tutorial, this is, I don't want to say an advanced tutorial, but this is going to, assume that I know what I'm doing, and hopefully if you guys watch this, you might know what you're doing too. But if you're just starting out with this game, or if you're playing along as you are listening to this video, I would suggest you start with the farmer's hoe, the wooden sword, and some food. What we're going to start out with is the trapper's knife. Why am I starting out with the trapper's knife? I want the consistent source of food that doesn't go bad, so I don't have to worry about storage right away. And I also want the stuff to sell. So we're going to go ahead and pick the trapper's knife. This stuff, the farmer's hoe, the wooden sword, the weaver's spindle, and the herbalist staff, we can build pretty early in the game, assuming we're diligent with our carpenter. So we don't need to worry about that. And as far as the food goes, so your townsfolk will go a day or two without food before they starve to death. And especially, if you have the trapper's knife or if you have the farmer's hoe, you don't, well, more if you have the trapper's knife, because you get food right away from the trapper, whereas the farmer has to actually plant and wait for the stuff to grow before he can collect the food. So that, in that case, you would probably want this food to carry you over. The other thing is, at the very start of every game, someone comes along and gives you some free food to help tide your citizens over while you're getting started. So we're not going to worry about giving ourselves food. We don't need the wooden sword yet, or the farmer's hoe, weaver's spindle, all that kind of stuff. Why don't I need the wooden sword right away? Well, as far as I've been able to tell, your town will not get attacked the first night. So the first night in the game, first day in the game, I think you're safe. But the other nice thing is, if you give the trapper's knife to somebody who is got some decent stats, they will be able to defend themselves pretty well. The trapper's knife actually does a decent bit of damage. It's not as good as the sword, and it's not going to basically fight the stronger monsters in the game, but for what they send at you first, the trapper's knife should be enough. Alright, I think it's enough explaining this area of the game. We're going to go ahead and embark. And this brings us to our next and I think final menu, which basically gives us a region and a little information panel over here. So let me explain a little bit of this map, what you're looking at here. The blue stuff is water. This gray stuff are mountains. This is where you're going to find, notice on the right hand side that minerals is filled out. Mountains are where you're going to find resources such as copper or coal or any of that kind of stuff. The stuff that a blacksmith would need would be in the mountains. Water right now doesn't really serve any purpose in the game. They might be adding a fisherman class into the game. I hope they do, because that would be cool. Or they might also add some ocean into the game, which would mean that you could have some trade via the ocean, which would also be really cool. Maybe you'd be able to trade with some of the other factions' merchants. That would be really, really cool. But for now, you can't do that. So really, water isn't all that useful. So you don't need to worry about settling near water in this current version of the build. That may change as the game goes on. The green squares is vegetation, so the more dense the green square is, so you'll notice that there's the small one, the medium one, and the large one right there. More dense it is, the more trees there will be in that region. So someplace like over here where there's a whole lot of it, there's a whole ton of trees. You'll also notice that there's wildlife everywhere except for like in the mountains. So anywhere in the fields, in the forests, there's plenty of wildlife, which means your trapper will make plenty of food. So you can actually re-roll the map over here. So if you're not happy with the map that you got, you can go down here and generate a new map. And the grayed out area, so you'll notice as I move my mouse around, there's a grayed out area and a big square on the screen. So the grayed out area would be stuff that won't appear on your map during your playthrough. The highlighted area would basically be the map that you start with. So that is the furthest extent of the map. That's all the space you have to build your town in. And while on this screen it doesn't look like it's that much, trust me, that's plenty of space. I have logged a decent amount of time in this game, and I have not even come close to filling a quarter of the amount of space that they give you. So there's not much to worry about there. So with that being said, I think I've done a decent bit of explaining. I'm going to take a look at this map here and just try and decide if I want to build here or if I want to, you know what, we're going to reroll. I want a decent bit of plain. This is our first town. Like this is too much mountain. Too much mountain here. We do want mountain, but you know, this is like a valley. I don't want a valley. I want a nice open field to build my first ever city in. Well, first in Let's Play land, not first in my playthrough of this game. I don't claim to be an expert on this game, but I definitely think I am not a complete and utter noob at this game. I like to think I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. So, you know, if you see me making mistakes, all that kind of stuff, feel free to point that out. But again, try and be constructive with your criticism. Again, I don't claim to be amazing at this game. So if you're there like, oh, eckohour's, you know, terrible at Stonehearth, well, maybe, you know, but I'm not. At no point did I come in here and say, hey, you know, I'm, you know, top 10 in the world at this game. Everybody else doesn't know what they're doing. No, I'm just playing this because I enjoy it. I think it's fun, and you know, hopefully I can entertain you guys a little bit with my gameplay. So we have a lot of mountains, man. I don't want mountains. I might cut here. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put in a cut. Ooh, actually, I like this region. Plenty of trees. We're definitely gonna want some mountains involved. Yeah, let's bump it over a little bit, and we'll build right here. Actually, make sure that we're not completely cut off the map there. There we go. So I think this is a good place to set up. We got some water over here. Yeah, I think this will be a great place to set up a city. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and settle here. And it'll go ahead and load in and generate the world. And I'll get right into explaining some of this stuff.